Jaque me ensinou a beber, Jaque me ensinou a sofrer.
Jaque, você não me quer mais.
Jaque me trocou.
Jaque devolveu minhas roupas. Jaque arquivou nossas fotos.
Que você não está aqui.
Jaque me criticava, me dando conselho, negou na antiga.
Jaque, você tá tão feliz.
Jaque, Jaque,
Jaque, você não me...
Hi everybody, this is PodJaque. How I say in Portuguese, I don't know if you'd say PodJaque in English, but this is our first English episode. We have had already 3 episodes in Portuguese, but yeah, the good news is that we're gonna have Portuguese and English episodes. When we have English, we're gonna have Portuguese subtitles and vice versa. So if you don't speak English, just turn your subtitles on and find the Portuguese subtitles, because the content it's going to come now is extremely amazing, eye-opening, and it can really change your life if you really dive into it and get into it. It has helped me a lot as a person, and I hope it helps you too. I'm serving Sharif. He works with his wife, Beth, doing some coaching into how to gain or regain your inner power. And I'll let him speak for himself and explain a bit of their work, but I hope you guys enjoy this content, and yeah, stay with us and hope you enjoy. This is my little podcast. It's called...
Yeah, is this episode 1? Am I like your premiere person?
you are the 4th episode? Yeah, I wanted you to be the first one, but we had to do some tests before.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. But you are the first in English. The first 3
right,
are recorded
okay.
in Portuguese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah.
that makes me feel special.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually so excited that you accepted the invitation to be here.
Yeah, it's actually, it came perfect timing. It's like divine timing, because I was just thinking, I haven't been interviewed for a long time, and I quite enjoy it, you know. So then you just popped up. So perfect.
That's so cool. And I'm going to have some very good questions. Right. So I will just start off, first of all, saying thank you very much for everything. We are at a studio from... It's called Hota 55 Studios, or Hota Studios. So they do have another podcast in the same area here, and they started my podcast is the first of the studios as a business, you know. So yeah, I'm also very grateful to them for all the beautiful work they've done here.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I saw the pictures, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm very happy with the results. Yeah, and
I meant to ask you, by the way. I see that you're Jaquelma and your Jaque online. What do I call you?
Jaque is fine. It's probably easier.
Okay, cool.
Jaquelma is a kind of... In New Zealand, I just say
Formal.
Jaque to everybody because I'm just got tired of spelling all the time. Right. So yeah, and so again, thank you very much for joining us. And so this podcast is based in New Zealand, right? I'm from Brazil, but I'm a New Zealand citizen. I've been here for 10 years, and so New Zealand is home now, and I love it. Yeah, and just a quick background, I came to know your work through your Instagram. I was gobsmacked at how insightful a man could be, which is not very common. You might agree with me. When I started reading your posts, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe this was all written by a man. So, and then I started following your content and seeing, your videos, and joined your Facebook group where you guys talk and post videos and etc. So it's a content that it's very interesting for me, and I really wish a lot more people would have access to that. And also that
Mm.
I heard you saying in one of your interviews that women seem to be more interested in the, because for men, I guess for men to get into that, um, they they would be confronting themselves a lot, right? So that might be not that easy for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an inherent thing of men and women that the uh, in the deeper realms of what we teach, men are more concerned with purpose and what that looks like in the world, and women are more concerned with love and how that shows up
Yeah,
in their life. So
that makes total sense. Yeah. So yeah, and then I I remember you put out a post saying that you would do some free calls for some people, and I raised my hand up to speak with you. And later on,
mm,
I can try summarize, but you said some things for me that were extremely insightful, and they stayed with me for the last couple of years. I think we spoke a couple of years ago, right? So what you said has definitely stayed with me, and I think it did shift something in my mind, and it
mm.
makes everything easier and lighter for sure. But before we get into anything, I'd like you to introduce yourself and talk a bit about your work for the people of our audience.
Yeah. So I'm Sharif Joynson, and I am the unhealed man, as people like to say, but it's not actually the truth. That the Instagram, the unhealed man Instagram, and those confessions of an unhealed man, they're not all actually me necessarily.
Yeah,
Mostly me, I guess, but it's really just a way of giving insight into the mind of men, and it's framed around the emotionally unavailable man,
hmm,
but that's kind of, for most women will say that's just men in my experience.
yeah,
So there's a deeper piece to that, and with Beth, my partner, we run Led by Love, which is a program for women who are in relationship or single, and they want to break the cycle of emotional disconnection, emotional unavailability, loneliness, again, whether that's within a relationship or within just their own lives, and you know create what we call a conscious partnership or a spiritual partnership.
yeah.
And the way we do that is ultimately we show her how to become, as we like to say, the light that he just can't ignore and
Hmm.
cannot help but feel devoted to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's incredible. Because women usually just try changing men, right? And a lot of your posts just show that it's just like a vicious cycle because the subconscious of the unhealed man can pick up on that, right?
In terms of the chasing,
Yeah,
you mean in
they
relationship?
can pick up that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
if you try to change a man, it probably means you think you're right or you know more, but actually you are also insecure.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot in that, and you'll see that in those confessions of the unhealed man in on the Instagram, there's a rhythm to the way that it's posed. It's the usual thing is something like your complaint and your point of pain is this, uh, and you believe that that's because it's all my fault because of this, and it might be true, but also here's the thing about you, boom,
Hmm.
and it always every confession of an unhealed man quote thing lands something like this, and it always is. She is putting all the light and the attention on him. He, as because the brain is a problem solving machine. So it's like, well, where's the source of the problem? And the mind goes, him, right? But what you'll find is to really change that pattern in any real way and permanently is just take that attention and just turn it that way on,
Yeah,
on you just for a minute. It doesn't mean that he's without blame. It doesn't mean everything's your fault or something like this.
yeah,
It just means taking responsibility in a way that honestly many women have been to uh, have been conditioned to not do, and to their detriment, and it's not their fault.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about men? Like, do you have men that approach you and say, "Wow, I resonate with what you say. How do I get out of this?"
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean that was my path into this. I was originally a men's coach, and I've worked with hundreds of men, and I worked only with men initially, and so that's common. But as you might imagine, the number of men who actually know that there's a problem there, and that they need to do something about it. It doesn't get as much attention as the women who are,
Yes.
who they are in relationship with or connecting with, and they can see the problem a lot more
Yes.
clearly than they can.
Self-analysis. They don't do a lot of that.
Say that again.
Men don't do a lot of self-analysis.
Yeah, I mean they're generally more externally focused. Like I said, men are a lot more concerned with sort of purpose, and that's the masculine expression is what does that look like in the world mostly, whereas the feminine expression of love is shows up. Well, how does it show up in me, in us, in how we feel? And so that's why women will always be more concerned with the inner realm than men. Doesn't mean that they don't look at it. Well, there's nothing to do there, obviously, because here I am, right? But yeah, it's just knowing where your focus is naturally going to lie.
Yeah. I was thinking, or I was a bit curious about if you would have some examples of common masculine behaviors that are purely trauma, but they are considered normal men behavior.
So behaviors in men that are considered normal, but is actually a kind of trauma expression.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, trauma is a heavily loaded word, but I mean, there's traumas, and then there's natural inclinations, right? As a man, and sometimes those things overlap. So the main one being that what tends to be called avoidance, right? Like avoidant attachment style in relationship. That's usually going to be mostly showing up in men. And where that ties in trauma is that many men carry from their early childhood a particular kind of wounding. And I would go so far as to say all men collectively, on some subtle but collective level, carry this same wounding, which is it's like the trauma around being needed in a way that you can't fulfill. And that shows up at first with a lot of men in their relationships with their mums, right? Is, if mum is unhappy, mum puts a lot of pressure on you, or mum is disconnected. Even the way that shows up in for him as a boy is, I need to be more than I am, right? I need to be husband in some way. Sometimes it shows up like that. And then what that creates then is this feeling of this deep sensitivity to being needed in a way that isn't appropriate. And that is actually what is happening in most relationships, is so many women are in a place where there are deep, we could even say spiritual needs that they have, that we all have within us, right? That through various reasons, rather than self-source that, rather than be self-sovereign in that way, they've been trained to look towards man as the provider of that thing, when in truth, no human being can fill that particular void in our soul. So we're looking at the other person in relationship to fulfill a need that is actually impossible. And that goes both ways, by the way. It's not just women and men,
It's just a bit more common, right? With men than with women.
Yeah, you'll find that on the surface of things, she's the one who is needing and chasing, and he's the one who's checking out and avoiding, right?
Yeah.
But below the surface of that, what you'll also find, and it normally doesn't show up until they're on the brink of separating in a lot of relationship cases, is that below the surface, she's actually afraid of real intimacy and really being seen, right? Which is why she attracted the emotionally unavailable man to begin with, subconsciously. And he is actually terrified of being abandoned below the surface of his avoidance. So, yeah.
So, just for example, I just want to talk through an example, right? We've been talking the first couple of episodes. I made an episode about ghosting with only girls, and then another episode with only boys, right? And I didn't let them watch each other because I didn't want one interfere to the other. And it's quite interesting how different they were, because with women, they were open to talk about things, both when they ghosted and when they were ghosted, right? Men they were naturally very defensive. They didn't want to really talk about it. They were deflecting from the questions all the time. They were trying moving to or talking another person, they would never actually get deep into the conversation. So I got into a point where I just let them talk because I couldn't really get deep without being like too bitchy. Like I was starting sort of a bitchy, but like I was bitching about it, and I was like, I can't get through. I can't get them to talk about ghosting. And I actually invited one of them was a bit more quiet and introspective type of person, and the other two were those type of very popular guys, so you could tell that they were kind of avoiding the questions. And why do you think men can't talk? Because they knew they were coming to talk about ghosting, so what do you think would drive them to not want to expose, or maybe, I don't know, why do you think I can't get through?
So just to be clear, we're talking about men who didn't want to go deep in sharing their inner stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's because they're men to begin with, right? There's just that.
Yes.
And also, to be honest, there really is an art to going deep and setting a space that is safe for somebody to open up in. Yeah. It's one of the things that we teach in, for our women, is that when it comes to communication, when it comes to connecting on that level, it's not really about what you say. It's more about the space that is being held energetically. And most people don't really appreciate the subtleties in that. And also, we call it the art of communication because it really is an art. There are some sort of principles that you can stick to which are very helpful, but ultimately it's like any other kind of dance or anything. Is there's a way to, there's a skill to be developed and a sensitivity to be developed in that, and it's something that's worth developing continually in your life, because it's incredibly powerful. I mean, I suppose on one level I can owe so much of my own success in all realms to my ability and to do that,
Yeah. And also, I guess I'm a woman, and I was trying to talk about that with men. Maybe if it was just men talking,
I mean,
I
don't know about the specifics, right? But I mean, if I observed a conversation, I could probably quite easily tell you, well, if you look at the way you've asked this question, you look at the way you said that, if you look at, but without setting eyes on it.
Yeah. No,
I don't know.
I might show you later if you have time. No, like another day. But anyway, as we touch the theme ghosting, would you be able to tell us why do you think it happens? We know women do that too, but it's vastly, majority men that do that.
Yeah.
It's even, now
Probably,
with social media and apps and having loads of people available to you at the touch of the screen, it happens. But even in the past, when internet didn't exist, men were known for do those things, right? To pursue. And I'm not talking about just people who like go out and meet somebody and hook up and then disappear. I'm talking about men who invest in a woman for months, and then as soon as they get what they want, they just disappear on the next day. And some of them even go as far as blocking them and, not wanting contact with them.
Yeah, it's horrible. And there's a few things to that, honestly. One is, and it really, I feel like hearing about that stuff, because so much of it is to do with just the way the world is currently, or at least our section of the westernized world, which is, what my kids are going to be growing up into. And so I hear things like that and I die inside because it's just so gross. And one of the reasons is social media apps. I mean, this whole thing of cycling through potential mates like this is, in the human experience, I mean, absolutely unheard of. Like, we've never been able to do that before, and it's clearly having a detrimental effect on the way we relate, because human beings are becoming so disposable like this. So that's one thing. The other thing is just, in general, a lack of spiritual and moral integrity in human beings now, and we just don't really put a priority on it. And so people just don't have that much integrity, and it's not just men. And a lot of people are really operating relationally at a very low level of consciousness and therefore integrity as well. And then the other thing is going to be, with specific to men, is there's something around the goal being achieved, right? So whether that goal is validation from getting a certain amount of attention. Oh, I've got just enough attention from you now. I got my validation fixed. Now I don't need you anymore. And if he's very unconscious, he won't even really pay much attention to the fact that it's like that. It just kind of, it's not it's very rarely going to be some master plan. Oh, on week 4, I'm going to delete and block and all this stuff. It's just some automatic impulse that he's not even really paying attention to. And that's the definition of unconsciousness, right? It might be that the goal was sexual gratification, which is usually mostly validation anyway. I think for many men, it's not just about the physical sensation in their body. It's the validation of the got one, right?
Yeah.
And then that's over. And then from the women's side of things, on that front, one of the things that is missing for women, just on the deep, most profound of levels, is their ability to say no, right? And I mean, to practice boundaries in all areas of their life. Yes. And that is what makes her valuable, right? Is no. And she's not available, and she is reserving various gifts that she has as a woman for the right person. Yeah. And if it's not in reserve, if she is available in that way very easily, then by definition the value of that thing goes down. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I was going to say, with women, I actually observe a lot of women who are entangled in situations like that, where the guy disappears and then he comes back whenever he wants, and it gives her some crumbles, and then she gets back with it, and it stay months and months and months, sometimes years, doing that. And I've tried to talk about it with a few friends, but I can't. What comes to my mind is, why can't women make that decision for themselves? Usually, majority of the times that I see, they are not happy with the situation. They are very unhappy. They don't meet anyone else because they are still in the hope that that guy is going to change and want only them. And they are not able to make that decision and say, you know what, I don't want that. And I will stop this. Even though I have feelings for him, I will stop this. So women are not able to make the decision. They are dragged for months or sometimes years and then they wait until he comes and breaks up, and that revolts me because you know what I mean. He's being an ass for all of that time, and then he comes and breaks up as if he's in the right, and women let the
Well,
men do that. It happens both ways.
exactly. And that's the key distinction is they let that happen, right? And
Yeah.
that's the responsibility piece.
Yeah.
And there are layers to that. The first one is going to be that it's scarcity. It's if it's not him, then who, right? And it's this feeling of I'm going to accept these breadcrumbs from him because if not, then there's nobody else. And the deeper thing behind that, the next layer is going to be their relationship to themselves, what we call your inner script, right? And so the inner script is basically the inner silent mantra that you have about who you are. I'm unlovable. I'm not worthy. Or it might be externally focused. Men leave. Love is painful. Whatever it is, and whatever that inner script is going to manifest in the way that you show up in relationships and for yourself as well. No matter what you try to do on the surface of things, right? So you can go on Instagram, you can learn all the red flags of a narcissist and all this kind of stuff. You're just going to manifest exactly the same thing until you heal that inner script within yourself, because that's the reason why she's staying and accepting breadcrumbs of this and playing small in that way. Because without that deep inner sort of identity piece, you don't have the moral philosophy to navigate this kind of situation. You don't know what your boundaries are. You don't know what you really desire. And what coincides with that is that a problem that is really chronic, as well as this sort of lack of no, like this lack inability to say no to things like that, is honestly a really high level of self-deception that for whatever number of social reasons, women have started to really be affected by, where they're really not being honest with themselves about what they want, and therefore they show up in relationships sort of half in, half out, wishy-washy. Well, I guess we could just hang out and see where it goes, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not really looking for anything serious, but it's all fucking lies most of the time, and it's lies to themselves, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that they're just lying to him consciously and being dishonest. It's deeper than that. It's that they're being dishonest with themselves, and of course it shows up as this sort of in, out, I don't know, whatever kind of thing. And then that kind of person is the perfect target, so to speak, for the man who just wants to get his needs met without going deeper, right? Target number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I think is that there might be, I guess, to be able to do that, right? To be able to disconnect and make a decision. If you love the person, or you like them very much, there will be a degree of suffering you're gonna have to go through. You're gonna have to, I've done that a few times. I have since we had our call, and I found people who crossed my path that were. I started identifying patterns of toxic behavior. It's not just like a one-off thing. I usually pay attention until I can identify that this is right. This isn't actually a pattern, so I've got to stop it here. Even when I really like the person, and I've done that a few times, and I suffer a lot. I go through a lot of pain, and all of those feelings of not being worthy, or fear of abandonment, or will I ever be worthy of something? All those thoughts, they still come, but the difference now is that I know that they're not true, right? They still come, but I've been working on myself enough to know that those feelings are not true, and I keep working on myself until I usually go and focus on a new project or go study something, and I deal with my sadness until it goes away, and it usually takes me a couple of months to get over, and then usually I'm happier than I was before, and I'm ready to meet someone new.
Right.
Um,
Well, look,
but are
there's
people not?
knowing and there's knowing, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah,
know it intellectually. Well, you know that intellectually that that's not true. I am worthy, and there's, you can know it on an intellectual level, right? But here's the thing: until you know it, like with a capital K, deep knowing in your bones, in your soul, and that
yeah,
becomes this, well, again, like I say, this new in the script, this identity piece. What's going to happen is the that wound wants to be healed, and it will continually find perfect matches that will bring it to the surface so it
mm-hmm.
can be healed. So you can detach, break. There's a guy, and then the disconnection, and there's a bit of grieving, and it's painful, and then you get into a new project, and everything's like fine again. But until it's really been healed, the next guy that you feel attracted to and connect with, it's going to be because there's a perfect match there for
Yeah,
that wound to come up. And look, even when you heal that wound, it's, we say heal, it's not really a black and white thing.
mm-hmm.
There will always be the whisper of that older script
Yeah,
throughout your life. But
yeah,
what happens then is, to the degree that you become more conscious to it and you are present with it, not just acknowledge it and then, okay, done that work,
yeah,
but you're able to be present to that feeling. That's when you become conscious to it, and that's when the person that you attract now will be equally as conscious, and it will be a much safer container to meet that part of yourself, because that's what
yeah,
relationship is ultimately for. It's not just for fun. It's
yeah,
not just for companionship. There's a healing component if we're talking about real conscious partnership and not just dating, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely, makes total sense. And another thing I was going to say was that, right. So I've been working that on myself, right? Because when I had my talk with you, I went through some of the difficulties I had, which were, I don't know, I'm very go getter, and always want to grow and learn new things and travel, and I'm not waiting for a man to, in my life to go and do the things I want to do. So I know that the type of woman I am attracts some men that, until they actually get to know me, right? So maybe they just see me at a surface level and then get attracted, and then do everything they can to get me falling for them. And then once I am falling and they start getting closer, they start realizing that I I, I am like so nonstop. I mean, and I'm not expecting anything back from them in terms of doing anything or being more than they are, but they automatically start feeling insecure, or there's usually two things that happen. One was that they would just get distance and disappear, or they would try and diminish me to try and make me fit into a box, that to make me smaller so that he can feel better. And I've been in both types of relationships. Thankfully, that hasn't happened anymore. But I remember that when I was talking with you, you explained to me. You actually asked me to explain to you um, how my mindset was when I thought about work, for example. And then I explained to you that in my mind, when I see like I'm gonna grow professionally, I'm gonna be this and that, I'm gonna make that much money. In my mind, that has already happened. There's no chance that this is not happening. And then things just start happening. And when I see I'm there, I've done it, and I'm doing it. And I remember you told me that I needed to shift my mind to have that same type of energy towards relationships, because towards relationships I didn't have that. Towards relationships I was always thinking, oh, I'm never gonna find somebody that it's actually admires me for who I am, or it's mature enough, it's got emotionally mature, and etc. So I always had that. Actually, I mentioned it to you. There's like in so many areas of life, I always felt that I could grow and get things together and work on it, but in the relationship area, it was always like I was this child that never knew what to do. And I was obviously being just prey for this type of man, and it happened over and over again. And actually, recently I started meeting somebody, which has been probably the most healthy. I'm still we're still getting to know each other, right? So, like we're not like dating officially, but it's been so healthy that I got scared at a point because I didn't actually know how it worked and how it's supposed to be. Like it's just like there's no toxicity. There's just a lot of understanding. There's fun. It's very healthy thing. And I'm like, it's when we were like probably about a month in, I was like, I don't think I want to be with this guy. And then just because I was scared, and then I actually told myself, look, this is what being in a healthy relationship feels like, because you don't know what it feels like. And that made me realize I actually did not know what it feels like to be in a functional relationship. And that actually,
Yeah.
I'm actually still going through it. You know, there's still things that come through my mind that I'm like, oh my goodness, I never knew that things could be this way, because I've always been involved with douchebags. So it's just like, really feels like I'm breaking a pattern finally at 38 years of age. I don't know if this is going to go somewhere, but I just feels like I don't know. I started attracting the right type of people to my life, but
That's good.
yeah,
That's fantastic.
yeah. So I've
And
been
one of
working
the things,
on it since we talked. So yeah. What were you saying?
brilliant, excellent. And you know, one of the main things that shows up in this kind of situation is, whereas previously what most people associate with attraction is this kind of fireworks feeling. There's this intensity to it, and there's all this
Yes.
excitement and butterflies in the stomach, which is basically anxiety, right? But we've learned to associate that with
Yes.
attraction, and we mistake that for love, right? But it's actually not. The truth is, when you get that feeling with somebody, I'll tell you, what that is? That is your wounding that has found the perfect match for that
Wow.
wounding. The truth of that excitement
I
is,
got goosebumps.
if you really want to translate that excitement, it's, oh my God, he's perfect. He's gonna reject me so good.
Yes.
That's what that fucking feeling is, right? So what happens then is, when people get into a healthy relationship and a healthy connection, and that's not there, there's this feeling of,
There's something
because
wrong.
now that dopamine isn't getting fired off in the way that you
Yeah.
used to. But the truth is that healthy is usually kind of boring in
Yeah.
comparison to that excitement feeling. But the truth is that it's through that door that, instead of having all that intensity that we've all been taught to associate with love through movies and Disney and all this shit, is what you have instead is depth. And depth is where it's slower, it's smoother, but you get more connection and it's more nourishing. It's the difference between junk food,
Yeah.
which tastes great, and healthy food, which feels great.
Yeah. You explained it very well. That's true. It makes sense. Total sense.
So the key part there is for many women, is to learn to lean into the maybe, right? Because this person isn't like a hell yes. Because that hell yes, honestly, when I hear a woman, she's like, there's this guy, I'm like, well, I know where that's going, right?
Mhm.
So it's actually a hell no.
Yeah.
But so the trick is for the maybe guy, is
Yeah.
to be there for a while and proceed like that,
Yeah.
The other thing, honestly, as well, is that people don't know, is that the basis for the most amazing relationships, if you look at like me and Beth, the foundation of our connection isn't, fireworks and all this stuff. It's actually friendship.
Yeah.
And what happens is, most people, instead of connecting with this person on a level that is like, well, let's be, it's hard to put into words, but if you look at friendship it's usually a lot more of a healthy connection,
Yes.
right? But instead, what we do is, well, here's this other person who I'm attracted to. They're not my friend. They're this other thing. They're this pedestalized, like we make them our higher power, so to
Yeah.
speak. And that's
Totally.
a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm actually speechless. This makes so much sense. And another thing I noticed I've been feeling is peace, right? Don't feel when
Nice.
you are with that person who will trigger obviously your wounds, you're always afraid, always anxious, always trying to do everything to make that person happy so that they don't leave you, right? And then you lose yourself and you lose your individualities. Um, and another thing, actually, it's I've got some friends who seem to be very strong women, but as soon as they get into a relationship, they absolutely disappear. They go into that little box and they stop their hobbies, they stop everything. And
Yeah.
but they
Well,
seem to be very
what is
strong women.
strong in that case, right?
Yeah, yeah. So is there how to identify I guess we don't really have a need to identify, but how can I know if I am a really strong woman or if I'm just putting up a strong woman face to the world? And whenever a guy like that falls into my life, I'm going to just go backwards and become that little, sad woman.
Yeah. Well, it could be that you are strong at work, in business or career or whatever it is. But in my experience, even that strength is a little bit external, what we call a masculine shell, right? So we all have an inner masculine and feminine, but we also can put an external version on. And the way that you know that you're not really living in congruence with who you really are, and therefore not really in your power, as we say, because strong is a funny word. We don't really use that
Mm-hmm.
terminology. We talk more about being in your power,
Yeah.
and what that usually means is being what that does mean is being in alignment with who you are. Because when you're not and you're being strong, um, you'll often find that woman is exhausted.
Mm.
She is just tired in her life. She's busy and maybe she's getting shit done and she's being successful in various realms and in the external world,
Mm-hmm.
financially perhaps, but she's like spiritually exhausted. And so when she shows up in relationship, she's in trouble. And the truth is that kind of tiredness, there's a particular flavor of unhealed man who is like maybe somewhat of a rescuer type who is unconsciously looking for that
Yeah.
in a woman, is that she's sort of tired and in there is she's extremely vulnerable to the man who presents himself as the savior for her.
Mm. Totally. And would I know that we would really like everybody to do your amazing programs with our Beth. But if you could give a few tips for women, for them to dig into that, to learn how can I be in my power, right? How can I be that woman that will not crumble when a man comes into my life?
Yeah, well, the fundamental thing and the most important thing is to get honest with yourself. Like I said, the chronic problem for many women is that just this epic kind of self-deception about their desires
Mm-hmm.
and therefore their boundaries too, which are just flip sides of the same thing. What do you want? What do you really want in your life? What do you want from love? Like for real, not what you think it should look like. What does your heart say, not what does your head say?
Mm-hmm.
And then the flip side of that then is what you don't want, what you won't settle for, what you won't give yourself away to unnecessarily, and what you won't those breadcrumbs, so to speak, that you won't allow. So getting clear is the most important thing, is the foundation. Because other than that, everything you're doing is just, a band-aid on top of a much bigger problem.
Yeah, that's true. And with my experience, I've been learning to love myself above, to be in my power really, and to feel my value and feel that I'm worthy and all of that. And so even though the way I try to put it when I'm talking with friends is that if I'm cutting out of a situation that I know is not going to end up well, because, it's just fitting into my wounds, I'm going to suffer. But the way I say, I made a decision, right? I'm not waiting for him to make the decision. I'm just making the decision. I'm going to suffer. But then I'm suffering for myself, right? I'm suffering for the person who is worth it because I deserve better. So sometimes feeling that love for yourself will be letting yourself, put yourself through that a little transitional suffering time, but that it's actually love for yourself. It's because I think just
It
because
can be.
sometimes when we talk about love for yourself, people don't really realize that it's gonna be hard.
Yeah, and not necessarily, right? Because here's the thing: when you say that pain is actually love for yourself, it can be. It might not be. It might be that the pattern is I get into a relationship that's not good for me, and then I leave, and then I suffer, and then I go through pain. That could be the pattern, right? So then, in which case, it's not self-love. It's unconscious acting out, and it's the deeper piece there is if you are separating from an emotional entanglement, right, which isn't a relationship or some situationship that was just bringing up all your stuff. The key part is that when that ends and what comes up, there is a way of being present to that integrates it. And so that if, as opposed to just, I'm going to be in pain for a month. Yeah, but are you present to what is really coming up? Because if you're not, that pattern is just going to repeat again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good. So what time is it? Okay. Can you keep, how long can you keep going? I don't want to drag you too much.
Me? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
You are? Because I would really like to go through some of those screenshots from your Instagram that.
Right.
Did you get the, yeah. If we could read through
I did.
some of them. And yeah, if you could talk a little bit on them, but almost like if you're talking to men instead of women.
So you want me to talk about it, but as if I'm talking to men rather than to women?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that. Why do you want me to do that?
Mainly because I think most things we see on the internet about self-development or self-love and etc. Majority are directed to women, and it's probably because they want it, right? Men don't always want it, or it's hard for them to do it. So I just would like to put it out there for them, for the men who might be interested.
Here's the deeper truth. I put a video out not long ago where I read. I've got a book that I wrote for men, like 9 years ago now, I think, and I think it's on the Instagram there, on the Unhealed Man, and so I read out this sort of section of the book, and it's all about him showing up in relationship with integrity, being emotionally available, all this kind of stuff. And what I also say in that video is what I didn't realize at the time of writing that I've since learned is, yes, he can do that. I can take a man and I can coach him. And if he's available, open to it, we can show him how to show up better in his life and in his relationship. And all that kind of stuff. That takes actually quite a lot of effort from him and from me as his coach for whatever reason. But something that I found that is way more satisfying and so much easier is that, and this is why I work with women now, is because what I found is if I take her and work with her in coming home to herself, in really sort of rewriting that inner script of her life and stepping into her power, as we say, her genuine power, not being a strong woman, but being a genuinely powerful human being. What happens is she becomes this source of inspiration and light for him to show up like that naturally. So whereas before it would have been like some boot camp experience for this guy, and then, the success rate of that is, questionable. When we work with women in this way, and for her to become who she is really always wanted to be, right, but didn't believe she could without a man or whatever it is, he starts to show up that way naturally. She is the source, as the feminine being, she is the source of inspiration that causes him to straighten up, that causes him to show up. So that's where I like to direct my attention. And as satisfying as it might be to see men doing the work, and they're out there for sure, they're only showing up for women who inspire them anyway. So my deeper purpose I found is to reach men through women.
Yeah, that's quite deep. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So
yeah, because here's the thing as well, right? Look, you don't want him. What would you prefer, right? There's a man who somebody had a word with him and said, "Hey, dude, you got to straighten up and you got to change." He's like, "Okay, yeah, I'm going to do it," and then he does that. Or the man who, just by being with you and being in your presence, naturally just wants to show up because there's something about you and the light that you emit that causes his heart to open and his eyes to widen, and he just wants to show up for you. You want to be the source of that, right? Yeah. You would rather be the source of his integrity.
Yes, absolutely. And do you think that starts healing his wounds?
Say that again.
So when women, right, if I start shining in a way that makes him wanting to show up, so will that in a way help him heal his wounds?
Yeah, so indirectly, yes, you the truth is you can't heal him and he can't heal you. This is one of the fundamental mistakes we make in relationships. But what we've seen is men suddenly start to become a lot more present to their patterns. They realize, oh, there's something there. And they tend to, it looks a little bit different. A man is less likely to delve into all his stuff and unpack it and understand it and all that. The truth is, a lot of the times he just starts to show up differently and more purposefully in his life without having to do all that stuff, But no, we've seen that where men will, for the married women in particular, suddenly he's like, okay, I'm going to start doing this program, or I've got this coach, or I'm going to this counseling and things like that. Whereas, nobody asked him to do that. It's just from the shift that she made, and he just sort of put his life into perspective in some way.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm looking through some of the prints I sent to you, and I see that some of them we kind of already touched it. You already explained really well a lot of them. So one that I was thinking we could try and talk about that I thought quite interesting is the one that says a genuine inquiry into how I'm feeling, not just how are you doing, elicits a feeling of panic in me. It short wires my brain because I never asked myself this question. I literally don't know how I feel because I was more concerned with my mother's feeling than my own as a child. I may even get angry if you push me to find the answer within myself. It's not about you or my lack of interest in letting you in. This is literally trauma. I find it quite interesting that they can't distinguish what's trauma and what's actual them in their relationship.
I mean, few people can, right? At the end of the day, if somebody has a pattern in their relationships that is painful and keeps showing up and they don't know why, that's trauma, male or female, right? And
Yeah.
and that's the definition of it is there's this pattern, and and in that one, and just to say, I guess for your listeners, is what you've just read out is one of the confessions of an unhealed man,
Yeah.
right? So it's like
Yeah.
written in the first person about him, and he doesn't make these inquiries into himself. Very few people, men or women, honestly, are walking around with making the inner inquiry of how do I feel right now, you know, and so when somebody shows up and asks him like, hey, share your inner world with me, it can be quite cause a panic, which might be some of the experience that you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that you've had.
They could be like, I don't know. I never thought about it, actually.
Yeah, I
Never
mean, even
actually
me,
looked
even me,
inside.
um, even me, like, I'm a pretty conscious man, right? But I'm also a very purposeful man, which means I'm very externally focused, and I'm not making constant inquiry into my own inner world. So Beth can ask me something about how I feel about this or that thing, and I'm almost sort of shocked on some subtle level, even now, and I might need a minute to find out. And there's something about as well being put on the spot to feel feelings that freaks men out. So there's an art to setting the space for that kind of conversation.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we teach in the program is basically how to set the space and in a way that doesn't trigger all his alarm bells, you know?
Yeah. Are you able to give us a few tips on that without revealing too much?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing is understanding that concept of setting a space. Is every conversation that you have takes place in a certain energetic space. What a lot of women do is because they're somewhat unconscious to that is what they don't realize that they're inadvertently doing is emotionally ambushing him, right? It's the emotional equivalent of he's walking along minding his own business, and then you jump out and go, ha, you know, and where did that come from? You know, so there's an art to setting that space through request, and that's the key part is making a request for a time and space for that to happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've got another confessions of an unhealed man. I'll just read this one more, and then so I don't hold you up too much, because I think I'm loving this conversation. I think we got a lot of good stuff on that can help a lot of people. And one of the confessions is about what we were just talking about, strong, quote, women. In the confession says, I go for strong women. So strong, that quote, strong, not truly strong as sorry, I can't read. Not truly strong as in spiritually strong. I don't even encounter those women because they don't resonate on the same frequency as unhealed men. I'm talking about the women who try to act strong or invulnerable, the ones who use wit and intellect to hide behind, because in truth they are the easiest to manipulate.
Yeah.
Right? So that's something that would explain kind of the women that we meet and seem to be very strong, and then they just encounter a man that matches, right, that wounded part of her, and then she just crumbles.
Yeah. Listen, the quote unquote strong woman out there living her life, doing her thing, all that kind of sassy Sex in the City vibe is the most vulnerable woman out there. And honestly, um, I still get this. I can still connect to this feeling that obviously I don't act on anymore, but from my own unhealed past is when I see that there's something in me that as a man with a sort of, there's a reason why in the unhealed man I use a wolf as a sort of symbol of the unhealed man. Is there's this thing of it's like challenge and also easy. It's an easy target, and there's something. It's quite dark, but there's something quite satisfying about watching that strength, right, vanish and melt away like this. And I know that's pretty dark, right? But that's the warning: is if one is living her life in that way, trying to signal to the world, living her best life, and all this stuff. Yeah, watch out, because there are men who, like my former self, who love to watch that strength break and watch that power that get flipped around, right? And there can be a lighter side to that, which is what we see for a lot of the women we work with, is there might be something living their life, something like that, and then in a healthy partnership, what they find is they're able to actually just relax. They don't really want to be strong all the time. They want to be held. They want to be seen, and safely. So that's possible, but to the degree that a strong woman is not conscious about that and what her strength is really about, she's potentially in danger.
Yeah, totally. That's something that we really have to keep in mind, because we go out with lots of girls and we have fun, and we do see that in some women it's actually easy to see that they're actually showing as strong, but you can tell that they are extremely vulnerable, even at the way, I don't know, sometimes they look at themselves at the mirror, or their body language when they see a man is looking at them, they just change into this different weak thing straight away. So it's
yeah. It's the female equivalent of a tough guy, like a macho guy.
yeah
Who's signaling to the world how tough he is. You don't get too many of those these days, to be fair. But yeah, he's not really strong.
yeah yeah. And another thing I wanted to ask is about what you mentioned before about the narcissistic behaviors, that it's quite a hype about it at the moment, and lots of people talking about it and doing videos and etc. I actually saw recently a not a psychologist, the other profession, I forgot now. The one that Freud was, psychoanalysis. So she was just saying that the narcissism can be genetic, right? But it can also be a result of extreme trauma as we're growing up, men and women. But when we throw it into men's behavior, into being avoidant in the way they treat women, sometimes the lack of empathy and all of that. So do you think there's a way of understanding if it's actual narcissistic, or if it's just somebody that doesn't work on themselves? And does that make sense,
Yeah.
what I'm
Well,
trying
look,
to say? Because if it's a
Kind of, yeah.
narcissistic, we basically have to run away. Because if it's something genetic, because it's the way their brain's wired, they'll never change, right?
Yeah. There's a lot to say on that. First thing, that all narcissistic behavior and all of that avoidance stuff, it's all trauma. Ultimately, it's all a trauma response, right, to one's childhood experiences. But in that whole conversation of does he actually have narcissistic personality disorder? If he is, then you've got to watch out, because and we start to put this. We start to it becomes conflated with psychopath, right, or sociopath, and all of this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter what the red flags are. It doesn't matter, honestly, even if they are or they aren't.
Mm-hmm.
All that matters is your own boundaries, your own sense of self, what you are willing to be available for and not available for. And the truth is that when you develop that in a relationship at a high level, when you know who you are, when you know what you want and what you don't want, when also you're spiritually aligned with what we call big love. Our process is quite spiritual in nature, in that sense that it's not just about your psychology. It's actually about your sense of who you are in the bigger picture of your life, honestly. When somebody has that, they will never attract the narcissist to begin with. And even if they do somehow come into contact, just their inner knowing will go, nope, and it will just bounce off it. The women that we work with, by the time we're done with them, they don't even have to worry about that. They don't even have to think that the chances of them attracting some psychopathic, evil, Darth Vader-like narcissist guy, which honestly is far rarer than people like to think, is basically zero. In fact, it is 100% 0% chance. Yeah.
So that inner strength is really the key, right? If we got that,
it's about you.
the external one really, change us, or I get it.
I mean, look, because let's use Beth as an example. The most highly developed woman I know, honestly. If I suddenly turned out tomorrow to be some psychopath, guy, she would just leave.
Yes.
That's it. And it might be a bit of a shock to her system, and she might have to grieve that and all of that, but she would be fine, and she wouldn't, And the idea that there are some men out there who are so powerful that they're going to basically hypnotize you into falling in love with them, and then before you realize it, they've got you and taken your identity, and you don't know who you're, all that stuff, that can only happen to you if you're susceptible to it to begin with.
Yeah. If you're not, if that self-love is not there, right? If that inner strength is not there.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, this is really good stuff. So I think we can start going towards the end. I wanted to ask you to talk a bit about your programs, and you got a book too also, right?
Yeah, the book is for men, and but I suspect more women have purchased it than men, honestly, and probably got a lot more from it, directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, the program is led by love, and what we have is a free masterclass that we have. Well, we have two, because we work with two groups of people: women in relationship and women who are wanting to call in a relationship. What we don't work with are women in situationships that they're trying to turn into a relationship. Okay. That's not a thing, right? It's not doable. I can save everybody a lot of time and money right now. If you're in a situationship where you're trying to make a man who doesn't want to commit to you, make him commit to you, there's only one thing you need to do, and that's leave. Two things you got to do: leave and then grieve. That's it, right? Amazing. But what we have is two free masterclasses, and what we really like everybody to do is to do those first. And the way to access those is ledbylove.co. So ledbylove, one word, .co. And yeah, watch that free masterclass. At the end of that masterclass, there's an opportunity to have a free clarity call with us where we'll get you clear on the patterns that need to change, what it is that you actually really do want, and the shifts that will make that happen. But yeah, we like everybody to come through that masterclass firstly because it's extremely helpful for so many women. They use these 5 shifts that we teach to really transform their patterns immediately. And also because it really helps give people an understanding of what we do.
Yeah, that's really good. I have not done the masterclass. It's free masterclass. Did I hear right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah, totally free.
Definitely gonna do that. I love that. I've got a friend in the studio, and she's all the time like, yes. She's pretty happy. She's gonna do that as well.
Awesome.
And I quite like the word situationship. I never heard that before.
Yeah. Oh, have you not? No, it's a thing. It's also known as
all the sense.
An emotional entanglement is also what it's known as. But it's a nightmarish situation is the truth of it, and it's really tough. It's really tough, and the way that comes about is from that lack of clarity, which is why we do these clarity calls too, is to help people not end up in that situation. Literally.
Oh, I love the clarity calls. Are just the best. The one I had with you literally changed my life. Seriously, it was amazing. Awesome. So I'm really happy, really happy with this podcast, the conversation we had. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing insights with us. I think it's going to be very helpful. We're going to do subtitles in Portuguese for our Portuguese viewers so that everybody can learn with you. And yeah, really admire your work. Keep on shining. And I'll always be talking about you. I always talk about you to our friends. And actually, every man I meet, I send them a link to your Instagram and say, you need to follow this guy here.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Actually, one of them came back to me. It
doesn't work that way, just so you know. But yeah,
one of them came back to me.
That's one thing. I'll speak to that real quick. Is one thing that always breaks my heart a little bit, and makes me facepalm is women who are in relationships and then they tag their man in the comments of my post as if that's gonna fix everything. He's gonna look at my go, oh right, yeah, that's me, you're right, and then change. Like
that must be awful. Yeah, no, I say like
every time
friends.
I see it, I die.
No. When you just trying to do that, it's like a hand. There's probably a worse way to approach it, right? It's gonna make it worse.
Yeah.
But I sent it to a friend recently, and he started reading your post, and then he replied saying, "This guy's just getting into my head. I'm not liking it."
There you go.
Stop it. He can't reveal all our secrets like that.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. What no man likes is having someone get into his head. Yeah. But what we really want to do is give women the capacity to get into his heart. And that actually feels really good for a man.
Absolutely. And I think it also helps women to understand that it's not about them. It's not that they are not worthy or that they are, unlovable. It's actually they're dealing with something within themselves. Right?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much again. I hope you have a great day.
Yeah, pleasure.
And we'll be in contact once it goes, once we're airing. And thank you so much. It's been
awesome.
Great.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Take care. Bye. So thanks guys for watching. This was Sharif. I'm really hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. For me, it's very amazing to speak with someone so insightful, and I'm very, very grateful. I think that's very helpful into our self-development self knowledge, self and helping yourself to grow as a person. Um, and in the end of the day, once we put in that work, we just end up being more peaceful beings, and we end up being able to enjoy life more. So I really hope you guys can get some good insights from this, and that might help you like it has helped me. I'm very grateful for this guy's content, so Sharif. I really, really like it. So he's got an Instagram account which is called Unhealed Men. It's called let me just double check here. Yeah, and it's unhealed underscore men. And yeah, just go in there and follow him. He's got a lot of good content from there. There's got links that you can go through his masterclass. And once you do his masterclass, you can get a clarity call with him, which I find to be amazingly, selfless of them to do that. It's amazing. I really hope they get a lot of, life retributes them back in double for what they've been doing. And I really hope this work grows a lot, because I think it's extremely helpful nowadays that we live in a society that is so shallow and lives in an unconscious and low level type of relationships. It's very important for people who are in relationships already, but people who are not in relationships, which I'm trying to speak into at the moment. Yeah, let's do this self-work. Let's do this. Let's get our inner power in our growth. And I hope this helps you. Definitely helps me. And I'll see you guys next time. This was our first episode in English. And I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.